Hello and welcome to this interview series ahead of Data Centre World on the 22nd and 23rd of May at Messe Frankfurt. I'm Rebecca Uffendale, tech reporter at Circularity, and today my guest is Deborah Andrews, Professor of Design and Sustainability and Circularity at London South Bank University. Deborah will appear at Data Centre World later this month, but today we'll be talking about 3 inventions or innovation that's had an effect on their lives. So thank you so much, Deborah, for being part of this interview series. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I had a nice sunny weekend, so very well, thank you.
Excellent. And so what was the first invention you've selected for us today?
Okay, so first one is bicycles. And I think they are obviously ubiquitous. In some cultures, they are regarded as poor people's transport, and people aspire to own cars, etc. Certainly in the UK, they've become, in big cities, often an alternative to cars. Certainly in London, very often a fast alternative to cars and public transport. People forget the importance and the influence, or are unaware of the importance of influences that the bicycle industry had, not just on transport, which I'll come back to, but also on things like furniture design. And some of the early technology that was developed to bend tube to make handlebars, for example, was exploited by members of modernist design movement, the Bauhaus group, particularly by people like Marcel Breuer and Mies van der Rohe, to make very elegant tubular steel furniture. But also prior to that, the motor car industry also exploited or transferred technology that was developed from the bicycle industry, like the chain drive, etc., that was incorporated in one of the first, or what was often regarded as the first truly horseless carriage, the Benz patent motorwagen. And bicycles were very popular because they were obviously much cheaper than cars when motor cars were first invented, or automobiles were first invented. So many more people rode bicycles than had cars, and the road surfaces were often really dreadful, very bumpy, unfinished surfaces. And it was the bicycle movement that encouraged the laying of things like tarmac and so forth, sort of paved roads, rather than the motor car industry. So those 2 interesting things. But in terms of social mobility, the bicycle was incredibly influential. Prior to its introduction, many people only ever travelled as far as they could walk in a day. So it would be their whole life was within a radius of about 10 miles. And obviously the bicycle changed that. And as a result, it changed the gene pool because people travelled further and met people who they wouldn't necessarily have met otherwise. So it's very possible that the bicycle also contributed to the sort of development and strengthening of the human gene pool and perhaps the human race. So that was one reason why I chose the bicycle. I was a very avid cyclist for many years, and I need to get back on my bike. I bought a Brompton as my commuter bike many years ago and really love that. It's incredibly convenient for hopping on the train and then cycling from the station to work at the other end. So it's great.
How do you see the role of the bike evolving? And now that we had the recent advancements in bicycle design, or like the line bikes you see across London, which are motorised as well, how do we meet the balance of prioritising sustainability and circularity, but then also having these advancements come into play that may actually tip that balance?
So I think that there are advances in materials. I mean, there's been a big challenge, or different challenges according to the kind of bike that you want to ride. So obviously racing bikes and so forth, the big challenge is to make them as lightweight but as durable as possible. So things like carbon fibre are being used for frames there, which carbon fibre is not an environmentally friendly material. It's great in terms of reducing weight, but it's an absolute nightmare and very often impossible to recycle. It also requires an awful lot of energy to make the carbon initially, really, really high temperatures. So I think really to assess the overall environmental impact, you'd have to, or overall sustainability rather, you'd have to look at environmental impact and social impact and so forth, weigh up the pros and cons of a whole array of different criteria to assess the overall sustainability. Obviously, things like mountain bikes tend to be heavier because very often they have things like suspension, much heavier wheels and tires because of the terrain. But the introduction of, or widespread introduction of electric bikes is something else altogether, because obviously they have batteries which are, again, really problematic in terms of recycling. In theory, it's possible to recycle batteries, but as yet we haven't got a really well-developed infrastructure for doing that. So in all cases, I would advocate maintaining your bike as well as possible. If it's your bike, it's easy to do, or should be relatively easy to do. If you don't know how to, there are training programs and so forth, and very often local bike shops will not only maintain your bike, but sometimes help you to learn how to maintain your bike as well. But obviously things like the Santander bikes, Line bikes, etc. And the one that I've seen recently in London is called something like People Forest, I think.
Forest bikes, yeah, I think I've seen those.
Yeah, they are, because there's a depot quite near work, and we know that they are collected and maintained regularly. So that's good. Ideally, we should keep products in service for as long as it is technically and economically possible. So it's comparatively easy to buy spares for bikes and either to maintain them yourself or to get your local bike shop to do that. Keep things in use for as long as possible rather than dumping them and buying new. So I think the sustainability question, it's complicated. I've noticed a massive change in cyclist behaviour in London over the past few years, because I've cycled in London, well, I guess for over 25 years on and off. When I first started cycling in London, it was comparatively, there were comparatively few cyclists. People tended perhaps to, well, there were still, racers and dawdlers and people who obeyed the highway code and people who didn't, etc. I think the challenge we have now is there are so many more cyclists, and unfortunately, whether the percentage of bad behaviour is the same as it always has been, but there are many more people who seem oblivious to road safety and the highway code and so forth. Many people, the people you don't notice are the people who tend to, abide by road rules and have reasonable road sense. So it's human behaviour is quite a problem. And also, if we're talking about human behaviour, people who just seem to get off their line bike and dump it, leave it in the middle of the pavement, which is not great if you're partially sighted. So I think human behaviour is a big issue, and we definitely need some more consideration of other road and pavement users if people are going to be avid cyclists. And it's for their own safety as well. It's fine jumping the lights, but think about all the other traffic and so forth, and people or pedestrians who are crossing the road. I think we need to be a lot more courteous. And getting to work isn't the Tour de France; it's a commute from your home to work.
And so, what was the second invention you've chosen? The second invention is. It's really about improving vision, and it can either be spectacles and or contact lenses. As a person with less than 20/20 vision, I either wear contact lenses or glasses. When I was a child, I had quite a bad squint that was corrected thanks to the National Health Service.
But having poor vision, now I can't see to read, without glasses, or to do very much at all without glasses or contact lenses, and I'm absolutely reliant on them. And I think, as an invention, they have transformed. And I can see you wearing glasses too,
Yes.
but they've transformed millions and millions and millions of people's lives. And it's a pity that people, not everyone in all countries around the world have access to should we call them sight improvement aids. They are absolutely transformative. If you can't see to read, then how are you going to access education? And I'm talking not perhaps about people who have quite severe vision problems, people who are classified as partially sighted or whatever. I'm thinking more about, the people who, if they had glasses, they would be able to see. So it's being able to see is, and again, people who can't see very well, they're either partially sighted or completely blind, have access to special education in the UK, the Western world. In many other parts of the world, they don't. But neither do people who could be helped with glasses and so forth. So it's absolutely essential. Being able to see can help you, whether you're a tradesperson or an academic, or you want to see for leisure purposes, whatever. Having improved vision, good vision, is essential, I think.
But I do wonder about your opinion about daily and monthly contact lenses, because obviously they're made of plastic and they're disposed. Do you think there's any ways to improve that system that we have currently?
It's a big challenge. Having tried dailies and longer use contact lenses, I think we need to dispose of dailies really properly. But actually, I'll save this response for my next question, because
Yes.
there is a link between that. But again, it's lots of behaviour issues around proper disposal and so forth of any contact lenses at all.
I was at Tech Show London, and I saw the talk on the circular economy, and one of the speaker's son or daughter pointed out on the street how funny is that crisp packets are made out of plastic, yet they're a single-use thing, and how they degrade, if they degrade at all, just takes so long. So I think it's the interesting concept of having something that we use so frequently and frivolously, but reimagining that infrastructure, I think, is very important. Now we've spoken about this, what's your final invention?
And coming back to crisp packets, part of the challenge, not only are they plastic, like many food packaging materials, but they are laminates, they're composite materials, and very often they have not only micro layers of different plastics, but also things like aluminium are sprayed on as well. So even if we collect waste packaging, actually separating the different materials can be incredibly difficult. However, if we think about conservation of food, protection of food, etc., packaging can be really, really helpful. And when we think about a third of food that is grown never reaches our plates, and that's because it's damaged in the field when it's growing, possibly through collection and harvesting, and then people buy too much a lot of the time. Although I don't know whether the economic downturn and concern about the cost of living has changed behaviours in that area, but very often people buy more food than they need and then they waste it. So they're not only wasting the food but the packaging. But packaging can certainly help to limit damage during transport, and also to extend the life of food as well. So it's all of these. I don't think there are simple answers to any of these points. The issues are so complicated. But taking a very broad brush sort of approach to plastics, they are the sort of the yin and yang, the good and bad of the materials world in many respects. Certainly, well, there are two main groups of plastics: thermoset plastics, which behave like eggs. When they're heated, they change their chemical state and they set. And you can't unpoach a poached egg. You can't unset a thermoset plastic. But they are those kind of materials, very often combined with, let's say, glass or carbon fiber, and they're incredibly durable. It's just recycling is a major challenge, especially for composites, when you've got not only to unset or do something with the plastic, the matrix material, as well as with the fibers inside. But thermoplastics, in theory, these are the ones that we're encouraged to collect for recycling. Things like polyethylenes, polypropylene, ABS, etc. They, in theory, can be put back into a hot vat or vessel, remounted and reused again, which that sounds fine, but they very often, when plastics are recycled, they lose their inherent properties begin to deteriorate. So coming back to the sort of the materials themselves, if you think about it, they are brilliant. They're synthetic. They're invented by human beings and developed to perform incredibly specific, functions. And they're brilliant at that initial function. Think about polyethylene or polypropylene milk bottle. It contains milk. It's lighter weight than glass, which is great because it reduces the environmental impact of transport. But what the heck do we do with it, when it reaches end of life? So milk bottles, for example, can be remelted. It's best to add a bit of virgin plastic to the recycled material to make more milk bottles. But the material does deteriorate as it's being recycled. Using milk bottles is great, but they need taking back to a dairy or wherever and washing and refilling. So we eliminate plastic waste by doing that, but we have another set of challenges associated with use of glass. Again, we need to do a really, really rigorous life cycle assessment to find out which is the preferred material for different foodstuffs. And also things like geographical location as well. It could be that when you add in things like the impact of transport, that makes use of even single-use plastic bottles less environmentally damaging than use of glass bottles if you've got to drive hundreds of miles, for example, to deliver milk. So, all of these issues are really complicated. But coming back to the good side of plastics, I think they've had a lot of bad press. And I am not an advocate for or against. I think we need to think about context for all of these things. But I say, an awful lot of people are actually kept alive by plastics. Things, medical interventions, things like stents made from some kind of plastics, various other medical equipment and so forth. Plastic use in hospitals is incredibly high, but where the heck would we be without it? So, I think the sort of rule of thumb, anything in hospitals tends to be incinerated because to minimize risk of contamination and cross-infection. So even if products in hospitals made from thermoplastic, they're not recycled. But what I would hope is that hospital stuff waste is when it's incinerated, then we get energy from the waste material. As it's burnt, it's used to help to generate energy. So they're complicated materials. So coming back to the contact lens issue, if use of single-use lenses suits people more than reusable lenses for whatever medical or vision, reason, then I think it's acceptable. But we do need to consider how on earth you dispose of them. Don't put them down the toilet. Don't get rid of them like that. Put them in with your household waste, so hopefully they will be incinerated and help to generate energy as well.
What is it you hope people will learn at your session at Tech Show Frankfurt?
I'm talking with an absolutely fantastic panel of people, and we all come from slightly different academic backgrounds. My background was design originally. Everybody is collaborating within different sectors within the data center industry. So our different backgrounds give us different sort of starting points. Isabel is going to enlighten people about the similarities between Vikings and the data center industry.
Wow.
I'm not going to say any more, but no spoiler alerts here. But I think the big thing that we are going to discuss is the pros and cons of liquid versus air cooling, particularly in the light of AI and the increased demand, not just for energy, but materials and data center services overall. So I don't know whether people will get answers. Hopefully our conversation will really trigger thought. But maybe people will end up sort of needing to learn more, because we do provoke thought, and there won't be a definitive answer, as in the case with plastics. There's good and there's bad, and also that different geographical location may different technical solutions may be appropriate for different geographical locations.